Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Secondsies³ brought to you by Alma Pictures LLC, featuring your hosts Ayla Hadi, Jessica Galletta, and Allison Weaver. We're happy to bring you another one of our episode of our series in which we discuss arts and culture from many places, spaces, and countries around the world. So, this week, we're going to be continuing our session about China. This time we are going to be hearing from Jessica, who's going to be presenting her little special, and we're going to be doing our usual ratings as well. So, of course, our main point here is to explore and discover arts and culture from many different places and spaces. And another thing that I want to mention about it is that we are definitely engaging with lots of diverse landscapes of arts from stages, film, performances, etc. And we look at the heart of performance culture, exploring how each place or region expresses identity, history, and emotion through dance, theater, music, film, and so forth. And through these discussions and reflections, we are honoring both the old and the new, seeking the truths that bind the arts together across the world. So, with that being said, I'll let Jessica start her presentation, and we hope you enjoy today.
Greetings, fellow Internetians. Today we are going to look into the very interesting art of mourning in China through one of their very specific practices. We'll be discussing this through the lens of a film called The Farewell. And this is an interesting film to represent China because it's Chinese American. So it represents both the mainland China and the Chinese diaspora. And we see that bridge. The director wrote this film based on her life experiences, and you see very much the experiences of a young woman who is sort of both worlds, but not really fully like sort of an outsider in both. Um, Having moved to America at a young age, and she was brought up in America, that's very much shaped like who she is as a person, which makes her markedly different from the rest of her Chinese family when she's back in the mainland. So you see this contrast, this sort of like butting heads of East versus Western cultural values, especially as like being raised in one way but being of another way. And I think the film is really good at representing like this misunderstanding, especially, and also you see like the generational conflict, and also just like the questioning of traditions, and like why do we do things just for the sake of being done, like in today's generation. So we will start on our next slide, which will show the film The Farewell, with starring Aquafina. The Farewell, a film directed by Lulu Wang that premiered in 2019 with a 90% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, is set in China and follows a young Chinese American woman, Billy, played by Aquafina, returning to China with her parents as they visit their dying grandmother. The parents act as if it's no big deal that she is passing and don't expect Billy to join them. But she eventually drops everything going on in her life in New York City to show up anyway. The film has a scene where the whole family visits their grandfather's grave, the late patriarch of the family. What struck me particularly in this scene was the presence of these two wailing women walking in front of them. And these two women represented depictions of professional mourners, which sounds quite unusual to Western audiences, but is a fairly common tradition in China. Next slide. In that particular scene, the overly theatrical wailing of the women contrasted with the mundanity of a family outing. With Wang's direction, this juxtaposition had a dryly comical effect. I thought it was funny. That's what I said. The family was visiting the grave site to pay their respects to their family member, as well as other ancestors who have passed on. but the occasion itself was marked by the heaviness of the fact that the grandmother was dying. So in a way, they were mourning that future loss as well, even while the grandmother was very much alive and visiting the grave alongside them. And I really liked this film because they weren't telling the grandmother that she was dying. Like they were taking on the burden of that pain for the grandmother. But Billy was mad because she's processing the loss of her grandmother, who's like been such a strong presence in her life and has to also like bear the burden of keeping that secret. So that makes that scene particularly interesting as well as most of the film. Okay. So we can go to slide. Oh yeah. This presence of the professional mourners who were total strangers to the family really struck me as someone who has faced the loss of both my parents in my early 20s and having to even today live with that grief. I understood the melodrama of it. Grief has many rituals to it that continue long after the person is gone. Not to keep one stuck in the past, but to keep their loved one in the present with them. In China, in Chinese language, the practice of professional mourning is called kusang. And on the next slide, you'll see the characters for that, with the two characters spelling the word meaning cry and mourning. And it has been a long-standing tradition in Chinese culture for centuries, which originating from the Confucian text Rites of Zhao, an old text written around 2nd century BC, describing the structures of the bureaucratic government and organization of the Zhao dynasty, which ruled ancient China for 8 centuries and set up the framework for what would become modern Chinese culture that we know today. With the history lesson aside, professional mourners and the practice of hiring them for someone's funeral serves two purposes. One that's deeply personal, and the other that's more rooted in one's duty. First, it was the family's obligation to ensure that their recently passed loved one was properly honored for the life they lived and the memories of them that live on in their remaining family members and their descendants. Next slide. First, it was the family, the performance of mourning consists of musical performances and dancing that accompanied a eulogy given by the performers. In modern day, we usually think of the usual eulogy being delivered by someone the deceased actually knew in life, but in the practice of professional mourning, the wailers, as they're called, with information about the person's life given to them by the family, honor the deceased with a eulogy that's filled with great emotion and demonstrates the type of person that the deceased was in life. It's most common to emphasize within these performances how the deceased lived in devotion to their family and community, and also to praise how they faced hardships in their life with great resilience. The presentation itself of the eulogies and the songs also are meant to signify the deceased's social status and prestige. These rituals are performed because it is seen as the family's duty to send off their deceased loved ones in this way. It's a way of ensuring a proper burial, something that's present in most global cultures. For example, in Greek tragedy, the play Antigone by Sophocles centers on the titular young woman disobeying the orders of her brother, the king, in order to perform the proper burial rites of their other brother who was killed in battle and deemed a traitor. It is based on the idea that a person's soul cannot properly move on if they aren't able to receive their last burial rites. And since they're dead, it's up to those who are alive to perform these rites in their place. Next slide. The second purpose of professional mourners stems from a deeper emotional meaning, as these mourners have a duty to take on the grief, the sadness, and pain felt by the ones closest to the deceased. The living, when left behind, bear a great burden of loss, which the professional mourners take on as a proxy. And I really like this theme in like grief rituals of like being the proxy for this person who's passed on as like the representatives of them remaining on earth as well. In service to the living fat there. So these wailers are a proxy in service to the living family members and friends. This embodies a collectivist mindset. The professional mourners act in service to their community, and this is considered to be a very important role. However, it's a role that comes with great sacrifice. Because of the great sadness that professional wailers take on and have to carry as a burden, they are barred from attending happier occasions and celebrations within their own community for fear that the sadness that they carry would infiltrate the joyousness of these life celebrations. And it's not that they are pariahs, but that they've chosen this life of bearing the pain of others, holding the burden of death itself, which unfortunately is a taboo in Chinese culture. Professional whaling is in itself is a tradition passed on through generations. It is considered a serious profession that requires years of training and practice. The mourners also organize the funerals and perform all the proper cues, very much like a stage manager in a play. They follow 3 major rules to do their jobs properly. First, they must shed real tears. They have to really cry. It has to be really genuine. So good acting, but maybe they're not acting. Maybe they're like really feeling the pain. 2, the wailing does not interfere with other parts of the service. And 3, the guests of the funeral service are emotionally moved by their performance. So even though this is a performance, it's not meant to be canned or like fake in any way. And I like that. From a more individualistic standpoint, you might feel sad for someone who is always left out of happy occasions like weddings and parties. And I'm sure it can often be a hardship for many who bear that burden. But the sacrifice is the price for performing what is considered an essential function in the community. So it's still a very large, very valued part of the whole. So, which makes them very much a part of the community despite this cultural marginalization. So in the description of this video, you will find a link for a short documentary from the Associated Press archives that follows a young woman and interviews her about her experience as a professional whaler. She had learned this profession from her grandmother as it had been passed down in her family for many generations. And now I will leave the floor to Allison and Ayla as we reflect on these themes and they share their thoughts about the farewell and its cultural relevance and commercial significance.
All right. So, do you want me to go first? I can go first.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, let me get my notes. So obviously, this piece is very powerful and had a very powerful impact as well on China and also people abroad who saw it and myself. I remember a lot of people were talking about it on social media when it came out. It was a really big deal. I think we can look at this theme in many different ways, and I have a lot to say about it, so I'm going to blab on for a little while. Please indulge. And thank you, Jess, for your very good depiction of what it is. It's very unique to Chinese culture, the way that people honor the dead. Of course, each culture has their own way. So, as far as my overall thoughts and ratings, we'll start out with the cultural appeal. And I want to first highlight wait, I think I have my mouse. Oops. Thank you. I firstly want to highlight the drama bourgeois. It's basically cross-cultural tension as well that you can see. The farewell offers a very nice and textured meditation on the interplay of East and West, duty and self focus, and or self, like community versus self, and its intergenerational subtext definitely reminded me in some ways of the dialogue of the Carmelites in terms of the weight that it carries, talking about death and suffering. though reflected through the comedy of concealment. So Wing constructs a film which both reveals and respects what is hidden. And I love that. It's not sentimental as far as the Western sentimentality goes. It's not revolutionary in terms of narrative form, but I love how it's deep, it's psychological, and very sensitive towards the cultural values that is shared even in the diaspora. So I would say that it would give that part a 9. For popular appeal, the film resonates very strongly with cinephiles and others, of course, but remain and also, of course, it resonates here in China and abroad where there are Chinese communities. But it was fairly niche in terms of mass market. The humor, which is gentle and which is very observational, doesn't really count. I mean, not count, doesn't really cater to the global blockbuster group. But the festival circuit was very successful, and the word of mouth shows that it captivates the viewer who really cares and wants sincerity and moral complexity. So also like art house audiences loved it, but it didn't really get huge public traction as such. So I would say for that one, I'm going to give it an 8. Now when we talk about the legacy potential here or historical significance as such, um I would like to highlight a few things. So again, I don't think it redefines cinema, so to speak, but it's a very important contribution to storytelling, particularly with in the context of Asia, US. So for example, Asia and the Americas, or China and US and transnational cinema. Like if we think about Saltaire's domestic dramas of Corrida's microcosms, the idea is that it's refining the genre rather than revolutionizing it. And it's very subtlety ensuring that it will stay relevant. It's a very accurate we'll say accurate portrayal of these things. Now, as far as I'd say I give that an 8. So the mastery of medium, I would give an 8 as well. Wang definitely has a lot of elegant restraint in the way that she directs, and her way is very quiet in some ways compared to the loudness of some directors when they prove a point. But it's very measured, and it also has a lot of irony, especially if you have lived anywhere in China or cultures that are similar. And the pacing recalls a lot of domestic or rhythmically controlled themes with long, I would say, fermata, so to speak, of silence where emotion kind of breathes, which I think is really beautiful. And there are a few missed opportunities though for visual boldness or sound design. But the technical craft is more, I would say, subtle in some ways. So give that an 8. For clear purpose and intention, I would say that every frame really shows the central paradox. Um, we have truth, we have kindness, we have individuality versus community duty. We have a lot of moral questions like, should we tell Nina that she's dying? And that's a really important part. Um, there's the filial pilot piety bit, the cultural translation, existential love, and there's no kind of confusion of purpose. It's very humane and coherent. I would give that a 10. As far as the effective use of symbolism, we'll give it a 9. That is subtle, but also potent, and the motif of translation, linguistic and emotional mirrors the opera. I'm sorry, it kind of mirrors what we see in double arias from opera. And the birds trapped indoors, the family meals, concealment. These are all symbolic trios that show belonging, mortality, and so forth. And their symbols don't overwhelm us like in some films, but I think they're enhanced. So I would give that a enhancing the work. So I would say that would be a 9 for me. Now if I go to the part about storytelling, I would give that an 8 because structurally it follows a very classical arc. Some similar to the upper comic arc, which has emotional truth emerging through silence and in some moments funny humor. And some pacing issues are arising mid-film where the tension kind of diffuses slightly, but the emotional crescendo at the end is really profound. And everything seems very sincere and finely tuned. So I would give that an 8. Now for the performance quality, Aquafina is very restrained in her performance, which is kind of like Suju. So acting through the unsaid. And Zhao Shujian's Nai is very radiant, and I love that character. And similar to Men and Farmasane, kind of balances vitality and pathos, and I really love that. And I like the ensemble work; it's pretty fluid, but some of the secondary roles lack intensity. But overall, I really enjoyed the performance quality, so I would give that a 9. For technical quality, I think the film is cohesive. It has, again, I'm going to really focus on this part of technical quality. Some muted palettes, natural lighting, and unintrusive sound design, but it doesn't push the boundaries of cinematic art. So I think there's restraint, but sometimes it will sacrifice the grandeur so much. So it's more like a sonata rather than a symphony, but I think it actually works very well. So I'd give that an 8. And as far as return on investment, which is very interesting, it had a modest budget, probably around like 3 million euros and a little bit less than that maybe, and got over, let's say, over 20 million worldwide. So I think that's pretty cool because they didn't spend so much money, but they had a really nice return on investment. And I'd say that it definitely advanced discourse on representation, though it and also maintained artistic integrity. So that's super good. As far as the market appeal and viability, I'd say that it was very niche. And it would be more for the educated, urban, globally literate kind of audience, which is a consistent but limited demographic. And it's a little bit introspective for the mainstream, yet it's exactly what we want in terms of cinéma de qualité, so quality cinema and kind of refined. It's focusing on refinement more than spectacle, which makes me love it. And it's emotionally clear, which also helps it to stay, very strong in the streaming context. So I would say it's if you want to give a summary, maybe it's similar to a chamber opera in some ways. It's modest but deep, and yeah, it's very disciplined. Though it doesn't soar to, for example, very high height, it's achieving something beautiful and rare and very elegant. So I would say, obviously, though it's a very sad theme, it's something absolutely like worth everyone's time, and I would give it an 83% out of 100 for its sincerity, its depth, its harmony, and I would say the way that it deals with suffering in a very raw and human way. So, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Let's hear what you have to say, Ayla.
Uh, this film was relatable. I feel like with the increased globalization of the world, stories like The Farewell resonate with far more people and is far more the norm than it was like 20 years ago,
Hmm.
where it would be a niche subject. People immigrate everywhere from everywhere. It's not specific to certain parts of the globe. It's a reality for people worldwide. And it deals with a lot of complex issues um, in a very honest and real way. So, for instance, grappling with the fact that your loved one is passing away and you are halfway across the globe. Some people can't make it in time for their death. Some people can't make it for the funeral. Mourning the time that you couldn't spend with them because of your own geographic location, the guilt that comes with that. Those are all very harsh realities that people have been having to contend with for a long time. And I really liked how they addressed it. Um, and this goes into like a larger topic where I feel like people reduce quote unquote Eastern culture versus Western culture. And I think people
Yes.
forget that that is actually the culture for the global majority. It is only a few minority countries in the world that aren't really moved by community, that aren't highly individualistic. That is the norm for most of the globe. And yet the way people frame, being part of a society that really values the collective versus the individual is that it's like this strange, unusual, foreign concept when in reality you have that touch like in most countries across the globe. Um, yes, exactly. Um,
Mm.
so that was something that really struck me while I was watching the film. So this is kind of like a long-winded way of saying that as far as cultural appeal, I gave it an 8.5 just because I wanted to be measured with my rating. I honestly would give it higher than that. But I'm just trying to remain a little bit objective just because of how much it really struck home with me. Um, and as far as popular appeal, I would give it a 7. I think that it has the potential to really cross a lot of borders and barriers. But as Allison said, there is a certain level of restraint in the process of filming it and the framing of the director that makes it so that it might not be as widespread. So I couldn't really give it a 10, but I do think it has relatively like a lot of popular appeal. Legacy potential, I gave it a 7 just because I really don't know how to predict the future of this world and how much value our current society places in a film like this. Honestly, I think that it has a greater potential if we were watching this in 2019, but just the current state of the world, like I gave it a lower score in that department. As far as mastery of medium, I gave it 7.5. I think that the I didn't really have complaints as far as sound and visuals went. I think that the performance of the actors really carried the movie forward. And I think that visually the film was honest, but it was a little dreary. Um, I thought it was really funny that both China and New York had the same sort of color grading going on, and even like in terms of the yeah,
It's
even in
true
terms of
though.
like
It's true though. They're both
yeah,
dreary. Anyway,
yeah,
not all of China, but some
yeah,
cities are dreary, like New York.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like even like the color palette of people walking in the streets in both New York and China were both the same. So like it may be honest, but just visually does not create that much interest. Or I would say it could create more interest if they played more into the visuals of the streets of the city. But, it might just be honest to
It's very honest.
what those cities are like.
It could
Yeah.
also, yeah, I think it also could be because like Billy, played by Aquafina, is sort of a product of both worlds, and the color palette represents just how her presence in either one, like they feel very different. Like it's a contrast, but there's actually more common ground between the two. Like she's the common ground
Yep.
between the two.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I thought that was really funny and definitely intentional that it was like very similar color grading, color palette in both locations. Which I think is also a statement in of itself that though that these two places are on opposite sides of the globe and positioned as being polar opposites of each other, but there's surprising amount of similarities and commonalities between both societies. Um, and as far as clear purpose and intention, I gave it a 9. Um, I think that there's a lot of subtleties and fun little layers to delve into. But it did a great job in telling the story that they wanted to tell. Effective use of symbolism, I gave it an 8. I especially really enjoyed the little birdie that we saw both in New York. Yeah. It's just so fluffy. I just, wanted to grab it and just snuggle it a little bit. Uh yeah. Even though I get freaked out by birds, but that bird looked lovely, honestly. Um, and where was I? Oh, okay. So yeah, for effective use of symbolism, I gave it an 8. Effective storytelling, I also gave it an 8. Um, I just it did a good job. I, I felt like I wanted more. That's all. Just yeah, I just wanted more, but it did a great job. Performance quality, I gave it an 8.5. I think each character in the family, like each actor did their job so well. Aquafina had shown a lot of restraint in her performance, which is kind of like opposite to the her usual acting style. Um, her grandma was just amazing. There was sweetness but it wasn't just like a cloying sweetness. Like we saw the tension between her grandma and her mom. So it's just kind of a reminder that her grandma is a multifaceted human being with a history of her own and little quirks and contradictions. And her cousin, like everyone, I feel like all the actors did a great job and they created a tapestry of a very believable multi-generational family and what it's like when a big family gets together. Um, Technical quality 7. I had no complaints really. And then effective ROI, I gave it an 8.5, kind of same reason as Allison gave. It costs about $3 million to make, and it, I think, grossed about 23 million globally, which, is no, it's not chump change, especially back in
That's
2019.
a very big success
Uh,
even now.
yeah,
A lot of films would.
yeah. They lose money, especially like once you factor in like marketing costs and
Hello,
things like
yes.
that. Yeah. Uh,
People,
I
it's because
actually remember.
they just want to put out cash grabs, and it's like if you just people want art, people want stories.
Yeah,
Surprise.
exactly.
Anyway, keep going. We keep sidetracking you.
Oh no, I love it. Like I think this is kind of what great conversations are like, right? It's not just the
Fair,
person
fair,
lecturing, it's a give and take. And then finally for market appeal 7, Kind of goes back to my reasoning for legacy potential scoring. I feel like it should be higher, but just right now, like I just don't know with the state of the world. So,
Fair.
uh,
When it came out,
lovely film.
it like blew up Chinese social media. Like
Yeah.
absolutely blew it up.
Oh, I imagine. I
Yeah,
imagine.
it blew
Like there, this movie did such a great job. Like there were so many things that I could relate to and things that I've experienced myself, like even small funny things where the hotel employee was helping Billy up to her room with her
up.
luggage. And then he was like, like what's better, America or China? She's like, it's different. Like I've definitely had that
Yeah, I've had that same
experience myself. And
conversation.
it's the same conversation. And it definitely opened up some memories because there were deaths in the family that I was not able to be there for just because it was like across the globe and the time that would it take to travel and school and things like that, it's not feasible to attend the funeral or the deaths of every single one of your family members, like even grandparents. But I was there for the passing of my grandma. And it was a fraught experience. Because like you'll have like the whole extended family. And when I mean extended family, I mean like second, third cousins, great great aunt, great great uncle, nieces, nephews, grandnieces. I don't know. Like you might have like 100 people congregating in the house of just family members, let alone like loved ones and people. So there's a lot of familial politics that goes into such an event. And you saw that reflected in the film, like during one of the dinner scenes where um, they were sort of needling Billy's parents about why they moved to America or like kind of like throwing shade a little bit. And then Billy's mom was like, oh, but are you still planning on sending Bao to America to go study? So like that kind of tension back and forth. That was also, I was like, that's very much a reality of being with extended family during emotionally heightened times. And then just feeling like you're going crazy because people are putting on a performance of sorts. So Billy feels like she's going crazy because everyone's just pretending that there's nothing wrong and they're keeping it a secret from her grandma, even though they're doing it as sort of like a mercy to the grandma, but she feels like it's not really a mercy, it's a lie. And then having to put on this performance for people and then struggling internally and having to navigate all that that was all
Mm.
hitting a little close to home. So this was a really well done movie.
Hey, that's lovely. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Now let's get into our question and answer time with Jess's amazing questions that she had. Um,
Yes.
so you can
We'll
ask the
start with
first
the
question.
first. Yeah, I have actually I also thought of a third one, but we can just tag that on at the end because it's like a much
Okay.
shorter answer. So the first question I have for both of you is what other significant grief rituals do you know of or personally have practiced from other cultures or your culture? Can you describe both the traditional value and the emotional personal value of the tradition?
Yes. I'll go again. I'll start again.
I loved it.
Okay.
Uh, so obviously, having lived in many cultures, many countries, I have a very different, I would say, mix of grief practices. Also having several different heritage cultures where family lives also changes everything. So like about eight. Like I would just describe one of them for you. Obviously, I will describe it as how I would want to die. Let's put it that way. Because there's different traditions
Hmm.
my family do, and I think there would be some that I would want when I die. So this is a on the record, people. When I'm
All right,
dead, you
put
can
the
watch
living,
the
make a
video.
living will and send it to them.
You can see
I
it.
don't know if the video is legally
We'll send
binding. I
this
think you
video
have
as
to
a
get
link.
like a
Be like, you need to watch this video before you. Anyway, um,
yeah.
obviously for me, I'm a Catholic, so I would say having a mass, especially 30 masses for the dead, it's a very traditional practice. It's a very high mass, a very beautiful mass, and it really would mean a lot to have one mass for everyone and then 30 masses offered up for my soul. Another tradition that happens, of course, and that I love is from Scotland, actually. And one thing they do
Oh,
in Ireland, and one thing they do is they will have one last glass of whiskey for the person in their honor, and then they put the glass face down on the coffin, and it's like wishing them a good voyage to the other world. And I think it's a beautiful practice, and I've done it. That's one thing my family does, and we will respect the dead by giving them one last drink of farewell, just like when you go to leave, like you have a nice little toast at the end of the party. Um, and I think the other thing is that, well, I learned this from Prue actually, is that the funeral is not just a sad point. It's actually a big, huge party and celebration. And also in many cultures that I've been in, um, we 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 have this beautiful celebration. Like, for example, a friend of mine died, and he was like, I don't want you guys to be super sad. He's like, obviously, you'll be sad that I'm not there, but definitely enjoy music and a good party for me because he's like, I want you guys to celebrate what is beautiful and good, and also to feel that I'm with you even when I'm dead. And so I think for me, when I die, I would definitely love to have a great party. Another thing that some people do in my cultures is that they will sing about the person's life. So someone will make a song or make poetry about the person. And I did that for my grandmother when she died. I wrote her a poem and I performed the poem, even though I couldn't be there when she died. May she rest in peace. Uh, but I was able to share my thoughts and also a poem for the people, and they played it over the system, and then I was able to be at the reception virtually, which was a real gift. So for me, I think, there are so many things you can do. And of course, we always have a lot of food, a lot of people get together, many people, it's like a big reunion, but I think there are ways to honor the dead, like that are so beautiful in each culture. And there's many things that I would take from different cultures if I could, but those are a few things that come to mind.
mm. Those sound like lovely introspective practices.
Oh, and also we do a lot of journaling. Um, in my cultures, where we reflect on their life of the person, how we interacted with them. There's a lot of discussions. And it's not just when people have warmed up on beer. It's literally like people are really thinking about these different elements. And by the way, people, if I order food and suddenly disappear, that's because the food has come to me. So just to
Mm.
say,
Do what you gotta do.
I probably
Do what
will
you gotta
order
do.
like Italian something or other because I'm hungry.
Heck
Anyway,
yeah.
and it's not real
Carb
Italian food
overload.
just because I'm not downtown right now, but it's fake Italian.
It's
But anyway,
whatever. It's
nothing compares
global.
to real Italian food. So go ahead, Ayla, and share your thing. I'm done for now.
So yeah, mine is a little complicated in the sense that there is a religious aspect and a cultural aspect, and a lot of times there can be confusion for both. And of course, like the culture is not homogeneous, so it'll differ from city to city, even family
Right.
to
Right.
family. There isn't really like, yeah. Um, As far as religious, I am Muslim, and I still remember watching that one Helen Mirren movie, The Queen, I think, where kind of details
Oh, Helen.
the
Yeah.
yeah, the aftermath of Princess Di's death.
Yeah.
And she made like this small quip about how her boyfriend's already been buried and she has it, and like the quote unquote Muslims do it quickly type of situation. So that's definitely a part of the religion that the highest priority is to bury the dead
Yes, of
as
course.
quickly as
Same
possible.
with Catholics.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
was just gonna say same with Catholics.
Definitely. We have
Same
to
with
bury them.
Catholics.
Absolutely. Yes. The important part is to bury them ASAP. Yes.
I was
Hmm.
really
Yeah.
surprised by that when my grandmother passed. I was like, it was like 3 days. I was like, damn.
Yeah, very fast. You got to get them buried in the ground.
At first,
Yeah.
I was like, that's kind of rude. I'm like, wait a second. They
No,
were
it's
just here
not.
like 12 hours ago. Chill. Like,
Yeah, Catholics are exactly like
So yeah,
in that regard. Anyway, keep going.
that's actually new information for me. That's good to know.
Surprise!
So
We're
yeah.
totally different.
Yeah. There's like the highest priority of like bathing them, performing like this one last
Yes, we also do
cleansing
that. Yeah.
for yeah. And to like guard their privacy and do it in like a respectful manner.
Yes.
And to just like wrap them in a shroud. So basically they go into the earth how they came into the world.
Yes.
You don't really put like jewelry on them or,
Mhm.
dress them up
Mhm.
in like fancy clothes or anything like that.
hmm.
Um, so things generally are kept, I guess, like simple. And then there is a quick prayer that is made usually at the mosque. And then, people drive over to the burial, and then there is like this long, long process of grieving at the house. Um, it is exhausting, Lord. And like, especially when you are very directly tied to the deceased.
Mm,
So basically, you have 3 days, the first 3 days of the death, starting from the day of the funeral, is just absolute bedlam and mayhem. You have like
mm,
hundreds of people coming to pay their respects within
mm.
those first 3 days. So you're offering coffee, tea, different types of bread, maybe dates, nothing like no sweets though, because that's like
Mm.
disrespectful. Like you're celebrating the death in some way. Um, then you're offering dinner. People are sleeping over, so you're having to take care of them and then wake up early in the morning. Like you go to sleep like at 3, 4 a.m. and then you're up
Right.
at 9 a.m. doing it all over again. So I remember I was like very annoyed with that. And like I would talk about it with like other family members. I'm like, you can't even really grieve. You're just physically exhausted. And they're like, that's the point. People are doing
Yes.
us a favor by taking our minds off of it. I'm like, I'm like, I don't, I don't see how this is a favor, but okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
yeah. So,
all similar to
and then
Catholics.
there's,
That's why
yeah.
I'm saying this is very similar.
So yeah, it's like it's definitely exhausting. And like I said, it differs from family to family, but I remember personally that like my mother and my grandmother and like people in our family would talk about how much they hate it when I guess this is like old school in like certain families and certain people, but like they'll come in and like they start wailing, right?
Right.
Which is funny because religiously that's frowned upon. So they'll come in, they're like, oh, like they'll just start like hugging each other. And I know that like a lot of women in my family hated that. So it was ironic that it was happening at my grandmother's funeral when she specifically told me how much she hated it when it was happening at other funerals. And then it's funny because like it's a performance because there were
Yeah.
people that I know my grandma didn't like who were doing that. And I'm just like sitting there seething internally. Um so like that's why I really like the video about the professional mourners and how they're there to help like the family members release their grief because myself and my cousin, who were like taking care of my grandma towards the end of her life, we didn't cry at all. We were just like sitting there, like numb and shell shocked and just like, you
Mm.
know, taking care of things. And we could see other people crying. And internally, we could see like other people looking at us like, why aren't they crying? Even though we were the ones like closest to my grandma. So I'm like, that was a really, like, that's a lovely way of looking at that profession because there are so many times where, especially those who are close to the deceased, where they do not have the release for that, especially when the death is so fresh and so new. So yeah, I was like, that's
So
really
sometimes,
interesting.
and sometimes it's a delayed reaction. I'm going to speak from my very specific experience. So
100%.
when especially when you're like lose two like people close together. So my dad died 2 years prior to my mom. So like I was in the midst of like grief of my dad when my mom passed. And then so it became this
Yeah.
separate thing. But like when my mom first died, also she was like all the way across the country. So I hadn't seen her since she
Oh.
like so that's like a weird thing because it's like wait they're not because it's like you haven't physically seen them in a long time anyway but like then they're like
Hmm.
dead and you're like what it feels unreal so I just
Mm.
remember when I first heard, I was like, I thought it was people from my family came over crying, and I thought they were talking about my grandmother because she was in her 80s at the time, and that would have made more
Oh.
sense. But then I just remember I didn't cry, and I was like, why am I not crying? Like, what the heck? It took like a day or a couple days. I don't remember. I was just like, also at the time because my grandmother, losing your child is like the worst thing ever. So every like the
Right?
entire family was over for her. So like
Yeah.
obviously they were supportive of me too, but I feel like I also had to hold space for like my grandmother's grief while processing my mom's death on my own. And
Yeah.
then also because I just remember and like I also didn't want to deal with it. I just kept having this urge to like run away, like even at her funeral when everyone's come up to me and like giving their respects, which I like appreciated that, but I also was like, I want to leave. This is boring. And and like I'm aware of that. I'm like, why am I bored right now? This is weird.
Life happens.
How long did it take for you to like really feel the grief?
Oh, I don't remember. I think it might have been a couple days because it definitely affected me even when I didn't feel feelings because it was just bled out into my life. Like I just couldn't function. The
Hmm.
things like my brain fog was like through the roof.
Mm.
I think it
Yeah.
made me a different person for a little bit. So that was hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially with
Yeah,
because it was so close after your dad's death.
yeah, and I felt guilty too for not crying. Like this is not fair because to my mom because it's like when my dad died, I was like immediately like broken. Like I remember it was really cry, but I was like, oh my God, I'm like the cliche wailing. Like I was like, oh wow, this is like a real thing. Like no wonder people do this. It's like the natural reaction. But anyway,
Yeah.
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 uh
I totally get that.
yay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go
Next
to the
question.
second question.
Um whew, it's okay, so like a little less. It's still heavy, but not as heavy.
This is like a little
So
less.
what are your feelings and belief just slightly, just like anyway, what are your feelings and beliefs around what are your feelings or beliefs around rituals apart from your religious and spiritual convictions? Is the act of performing rituals empty if it's not done because of someone's true beliefs, but because they feel like they have to? Or is ritual in itself sacred in the very act of performing it? I would love to hear your thoughts.
I'll go again if you want. I have a lot of thoughts about this,
Okay.
but I may not share all of them. I think ritual is very important.
Especially with Catholicism.
Okay, because first of all, like, I think ritual is a sense of closure for people. Right? Some people go to mass only when
Hmm.
their family died, for example, right? But it's kind of like closing a chapter for that person, and giving respect and honor to the person's life. whether that person is religious or not religious at all. Um, a second thing I think is that it allows someone to have time to reflect. So for example, if it's a high mass, like that takes like 2 hours to do a whole mass. And then you
Oh,
have this
wow.
whole
Yeah.
day, like, yeah, and sometimes 3 hours if it's a super high mass. Like if they're actually bringing like choir and stuff and a whole thing, then that's gonna be 3 hours long, like a super.
Oh.
So it gives time for the family to really could really process their feelings alone, so to speak, during the mass, for example.
Hmm.
If in that case. Now, I'm talking about outside of religious context, I think the parties or the even going to go to the cremation center or whatever their personal thing is, there will always be some format, I would say, of ritual that's available as well. Like for example, when someone I know died, we had a high mass was 3 hours long, and then we went to lunch. That was another 3 hours. And the family literally didn't stop talking to people for like so long. But that's the way that it goes for high mass. But if you're not religious at all, I think these closure things, whether it's just like drinking the last glass of whiskey for the person after they've passed, or you know, going somewhere to honor their ashes or putting their ashes somewhere where it's respectful, in the ocean or whatever, wherever they like, for example, one good friend of mine, he died and he was a rowing coach, and they put some of his ashes around the rowing center. So like whatever is the practice, whether it's religious or not, I think it's a beautiful, oh my gosh, I'm reading the chat. Anyway, it's a beautiful way to like, respect someone, and there's different ways to do it, but it's kind of like you're allowing your heart to say, okay, this person is not here. I respect their life. I respect their person. I respect who they are. And I'm thankful that this person was there. Even if that person wasn't the best person ever. When someone dies, people kind of have this, some people will have this thankfulness at the end of their life. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you know what? Even though that person was horrible, or even though that person I didn't really get along, or I wasn't very connected, I'm thankful for the lessons that that person taught, for example. So there's also the people that are in a more community base, like China, for example, where there's this whole what do you call it? Um this community obligation, right? You need to go visit the graves of the loved ones every year. Similar to Mexico, right? We're about to hit Day of the Dead, which is actually pretty cool that we're talking about this right before Day of the Dead. But
Yeah.
I think that's the really interesting thing. Like Day of the Dead is very misunderstood. It's where you can celebrate someone's life, you can have good food, you can be with your family and respect the people who have gone before. So whatever the practice is, whether it's just something very simple like last drinks, or a little party to respect the dead, or if it's something more elaborate like a high mass, I honestly believe that it's something, whatever religious culture or unreligious culture, I think it's something that is a transition point, if that makes sense. It's a transition point where the people can say, you know what, this person is not here. I need closure. I need to feel that this person is not here, and I need a place where I can process that emotion outside of work or whatever. So that's my thoughts.
Mm. Uh, I feel like this question has so many layers to it. So I apologize if I don't answer all of them,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm gonna, yeah, specifically reference the part where it says, is the act of performing rituals empty if it's not done because of someone's true beliefs, but because they feel like they have to? And for me, even this part of Muslim faith, Muslim belief I carry throughout my life. And it is a concept that intention is so important. The concept of niyyah, intention, that you have to sort of declare your intention with every action that you take. And, you know, even can take that into consideration with the way others act around you. So, um, it's a difficult thing for me to grapple with because I would have to say that no, like if you want the ritual to actually have meaning and significance, you have to have an intention behind it. You can't just be going through the motions just because everyone else is doing it. And that doesn't mean that like, oh, I can do something and I don't really fully believe it, but I want to do it to honor the person who was deceased. I feel like that's different than, oh, I'm just going to go through these motions just
Yeah.
because everyone else is doing it and I don't really believe it. So that's kind of where the intention part comes in. What is your intention? And that carries in through whether, you know, rituals have significance. That's like my personal opinion. Um, and yeah, the ritual itself has sanctity and is sacred according to the
Definitely.
intent of the person performing it. So yeah, this is kind of like a tangent. But I love how in the movie they balanced humor and absurdity with like the grief of the whole
Yeah.
situation. So like for instance, the scene in the wedding where everyone's doing the little chicken dance and you know, getting increasingly more deranged. That very much was a reflection sort of in my grandma's funeral. It's not just her funeral. This is like very common with like the grieving process in our culture. So you definitely have moments of severe grief, but remember before what I said that like we would stay up till like 3 a.m., you know, just like taking care of the guests and breaking down and cleaning and everything. And then you have like all these people sleeping over. So you have these moments of extreme grief, and then you have moments of complete absurdity. Like
Mm.
people show up to the sleepover in footy pajamas, and then you have like great grandma who's like 70 years old with a sheet mask on her face because a young niece was like, "Hey, everybody, let's do face masks," and just like giggling and laughing until like your stomach hurts, like reminiscing about like, I don't know, old family drama or old memories of grandma. So, you know, it's just like, I feel like that's also part of the ritual of grieving someone that you've lost.
Yeah. So good. So do you have another thing you said you want to add a little question, Jess,
Yeah.
before we go to
Yeah,
popular
it was something
culture
I
and
was
change our topic?
yeah, this is something I was thinking about and reflecting when I was like finalizing my draft. So this is circling back to the Chinese mourners. I was also in my research read or came across some research saying that the practice is at risk of dying out or it's kind of fading into obscurity.
Certain
So
places.
yeah, like in certain places. So my question is, does continuing such a tradition make sense in the modern world? And is it worth holding on to traditions from the past, even as these cultures experience many social changes?
Mm. Um, for me, I think yes. I think if the tradition is giving cultural value, for example, I think it's good for the people that want to practice it to keep doing it. So, for example, just like practicing a musical instrument like I don't know, the hurdy-gurdy, right? That's a definite cultural niche instrument, right? And I think that's something where it's something that does have cultural value. While like who's gonna play the lute or the hurdy-gurdy? You know what I mean? Like there's a very niche group of people,
Yeah.
but I think it's important to remember where we came from. Now things can be changed or or modified or whatever, but and I think it's really sad when a piece of culture dies. But of course, I think it's also
Yeah.
important to move on, right? If that makes sense. Like to move on
Yeah.
from things that maybe don't have as much meaning now because that is gone in the culture. So I think it's a balance, and I think it depends on the individual person which parts of culture they want to connect to still from the past and which things they'd like to change because of course culture is always evolving. That's my main thought.
Yeah, and I also think it stems from what Ayla was saying about intentionality, which like is the ritual about empty or is the ritual itself going to have value? And I think as with each generation, maybe sometimes the intention wanes or you don't like some like younger generations forget the original intention or they start to question, like they have questions about the intention, like they're like, they're taught and socialized to think a certain way about this, a
Yeah, I
tradition or a
think
ritual,
sometimes
and then they're
things
like,
get lost,
they're
definitely.
like, but do I feel that way? Yeah, is that my intention? Is that like how I feel about it? Especially our current generation, I think young people today, we question like everything. So but there's a sadness to it, especially for that woman in the documentary who's like, not for her, but like the practice itself like has been such a like a deeply rooted like family tradition for her, like through her generations. And she's sort of like, it's almost like, I don't know if she has children or not, but it's like almost like the last generation of like a generational calling or something.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, do you want to answer the question? I see baby is here. How cute. He's our guest.
Um, I don't know. I think that's a tough question that people are grappling with, like on so many different playing fields and um, categories. I think that a lot of times things evolve. Just like in the piece, they said that the practice itself evolved throughout the centuries. So I think that there's still room for it. It might look different. But yeah, I'm unsure.
It's okay, you can be unsure, that's an answer.
All right,
Yeah.
so I think we're gonna move to our discussion
Go back
on.
to my slide where I said the part in which we talk about
Here we
stuff.
go.
I liked that one.
So let's go to the discussion on popular.
Mm.
Um, I can start with one.
Okay.
So this is actually about sports because sports is a form of entertainment.
Oh,
And
Mm.
yes, gladiators and bread and circuses.
Yeah, indeed.
yes, but this is actually better than that. This is from
Yeah, less blood.
Thing. So there are these two girls that just managed to um go from Peru to Australia. And they were raising money for this group called Outward Bound UK, which is super cool. And it's
Hmm.
about getting people involved in outdoors and sports and things like that. And they have an Instagram channel called Seize the Day 2022. And basically, what they did was they rode from Peru to Australia, 8,000
Wow.
thousand miles. And the people that did it are Jess Rowe and also Miriam Payne. And they finally finished their row all the way from Peru to Australia, which is absolute insanity, to be very honest. And now they are done with that, and they actually completed a record, which is nuts. So I think that
Wow.
really is super cool as far as endurance. And of course, that costs a lot of money to do, but they managed to get all the way to Australia, which I think is absolutely fantastic. It was a great media story, absolutely incredible effort, Herculean effort from these ladies. And I want to just shout them out because I think that's fantastic. And that was only 5 days ago that they managed to do this. So insane.
That's
Insane.
really heartwarming.
Yeah. So I wanted to give you a really cool story, and that's the story.
Yay. My pop culture news to share, it's industry news too. And it's specific to
Ooh.
where I'm locally based in Philadelphia. So there is a new HBO series out called Task. It is from the same person who created Mayor of Easttown, and it was
Nice.
filmed out in Delco.
Oh,
Woohoo.
really?
I
It was
remember
filmed in Delco?
actually, I knew like it was happening when it was happening. When when the production wrapped, they did a special wrap party for the like all the background talent and crew and stuff. Well, specifically the background
Ooh.
talent at my work. So it was like a building wide thing. It was very cool. So yeah, it had a lot of actor, like theater kids, and then Mark Ruffalo apparently showed up, but I didn't get to see him.
I
Briefly,
love him.
I know, and apparently he's really short. He's a short king.
Short. Yeah.
Yes.
He is short.
Yeah, like he came and then people swarmed him, so he's probably like bounced. He probably had his own wrap party to be at, like his VIP. But yeah, I heard he
He's
like
very
ate
fluffy.
yeah, he ate a couple sliders apparently. He ate burger sliders, so that's all I know. He showed up. It was I also think that's like such a cool, like that was such a good green flag for him. I'm like, I love that he like because none of the other main cast really showed up because it's just the background
Mhm.
people or the minor parts. And I just love that he showed up and he was like, I'm
No, but
here for the
that's him.
people. I'm
He
a man
does
of the
that.
people.
He's cool like that.
Yeah, no, because like
Yeah.
he started from humble beginning. He started working class too, so he knows it, and I love that. And he's like the most famous of that cast, so like it was kind of I was like, good for him, good points. I was
Thank you
too
for
busy to
spilling
like,
that tea.
yeah, and I don't even know what I would have been able to, I think it was like I wanted to like see him, but I'm like, I don't know what I would have said. I'd be like, hi, I think you're really cool, and I had a crush on you when I was like in college.
Whoa.
I would not say that.
Dear God, I hope
I mean, I
not.
still do.
Right.
No, I mean, also that never went away. No, I'm just kidding. He's like older now. I have a crush on him. I have a crush on 30s Mark Ruffalo.
Fair, fair. Okay.
Oh my.
So what's your news?
Oh, well, I wasn't really expecting one of you guys to talk about the Louvre break-in. I haven't followed
Oh
it that
yeah,
much,
I
but that
didn't
was
think that was that
Oh,
to me. But anyway,
I think it's funny. I think it's so funny.
I thought it was dumb.
I'm on the side of I thought I'm on the side of TikTok where everyone is like, yes, diva, because and then I saw a video last night or this morning where this girl I follow, she said how crazy it is that it's easier to break into the Louvre than it is to break in to steal something from a CVS in the US.
Oh my
Because
God.
like you can't even steal deodorant from a CVS, but you can steal jewels from the Louvre. Like it's because
I think it's
everything's all locked up
ridiculous.
and sometimes you can't
Anyway.
even
Yeah.
it's so funny.
Anyway,
Anyway,
so
I
what's
Did
hope
you
your
that the
see
story?
jewels I hope they're not like melted down for parts. I hope that like they're like used as like a
No, they'll
money
sell them
laundering
on
scheme, like some
they'll
Ponzi
sell them.
thing. Yeah, I hope
Yeah.
whoever sells them like just keeps them for lols.
Yeah. Did you
Like
see the
it just
photo of the detective who's investigating it?
No.
no.
Oh my
I didn't
gosh,
really see it.
something like out of Knives Out or something. Very
Oh my
theatrical.
God.
I'm sure that's a joke.
And Napoleon kind of sucks, so I feel like this is like karma for him.
Yeah. But that wasn't actually like my news, but I was like, I bet one of them are gonna mention it, but
No, no,
like,
no.
yeah.
Oh
It didn't
yeah.
really make a big impression on me. I was like, okay, whatever. They always steal stuff.
Yeah. I think like if it happened like 10 or 15 years ago, there probably would have been a bigger reaction, but now everyone's just
I mean, like,
okay.
oh no, scandal. Like now we're just laughing at it because like people are like, it's so horrible and like la
I
la
just
la,
think
like
it's
clutching their
dumb.
pearls, and now we're just like, what the that we're like that's I love it. I love that for them.
Yeah.
It's
I just
just
think it's
like,
funny, and I
yes,
think it's
queen.
also probably good publicity for the Louvre. You understand what I mean? They could have even set it up.
Yeah.
They could
Yeah.
have literally even set it up, been like, all right, we need publicity for the Louvre. All right, let's go.
Or, they know how to leverage. I feel like, I don't know if they set it up, but like, I feel like
I
they're like
mean,
shit because it's like it's
they
a
definitely
crisis
know how to
situation because they could have lost face, but I think they faced that crisis, PR
Of
crisis
course
that they were
they
able to
did.
really like
Like a
spin.
boss. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
escaped on like little scooters.
Mhm. There's a lot of funny footage in Italian going around about that.
Okay. But before we get too sidetracked, I'll share my
There
quick
you
little
go.
news. Yeah. So basically, there's this festival that has been going on in Liverpool since the early 90s, and they just announced that they are putting tickets up for pre-sale. It's the Africa Oye Festival,
Oh,
and yeah, it's taking place in Liverpool. It's like this huge global event, and they try to make it like super accessible. Like if you look up the cost of tickets online, it's like £11. And then for locals, they do like subsidized or like lower cost tickets, and then I think 12 and under, it's for free or something like that. So even though it's like this huge event that has this long history, they try to make it like they try to have it so that it remains accessible. Uh, and the way that it's going to be set up, it's just to celebrate the richness of African heritage, and really celebrate the culture, even though like Africa is like such a huge continent. But it's definitely a way to
rather.
counteract. Sorry?
Rather. That's an understatement. Anyway, keep going.
Yes. Yeah. It's definitely to counteract this like very colonial depiction of the continent that's just been widespread. And it's an immersive experience. They have a bunch of cultural exhibits, arts and crafts, food vendors. So yeah, if anybody is planning on visiting the UK or is interested in attending this event, they have an early bird special going on. So check it out.
I love it. And what's
Yeah.
yours, Jess?
Oh, I already told you the task thing.
Oh, right, right, right. That's right. We did it. So now we go to
I
my
already spilled my
brain.
tea.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go to final thoughts. So is there anything that anybody wants to share for final thoughts or anything interesting? All
I think we
right.
shared many,
What?
many, many, many,
We
many,
said
so
lots
many
of
thoughts.
interesting things, so
Yes.
and lots of thoughts. So
My
anyway,
final thought is that I think we had great thoughts today, and I appreciate the thoughts, and I'm grateful to get to know both of you guys a little more today and hear your thoughts and
yeah,
share my
thank you
thoughts.
for sharing your idea, your personal story too. Really appreciate that.
Yeah,
I hope
Yeah,
everybody.
this was a
we should
very
do.
intimate experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I thought I was gonna cry more. Thank God I did it. I was
Well,
like,
you can't help
man.
it. Sometimes life happens. But yeah, thank you,
Yeah.
everybody. And also thank you to Ayla's baby for joining us as well as our
Oh
guest.
my God. I know she's like her whole person. I was like watching her. She was just like
No,
vibing. I was
she's
like,
just
wow.
vibing the
She
whole
has a
time.
personality.
She wasn't
Her
dying.
personality like came across the screen. This girl has charisma. I'm just gonna
Yeah, she
say,
Oh
or
my
does.
maybe I'm biased.
gosh.
She's definitely charismatic.
Baby model.
For real.
You
Anyway.
should submit her though, and maybe like put a little hijab on her so she could be like good representation.
Oh, God.
Baby girl.
Oh, baby girl. So anyway, thank you everyone, and we'll be back. And next time we are going to be showcasing United States of America with
America. Like,
interesting
yeah.
piece. So hopefully you can join us for that one. And cheers, everyone.
It's exciting.
Next time.
Nice.